Hello again. This is Luis Rivera. I'm continuing on the lesson for June 12th. That day is coming. We stopped off at chapter 3 of Zephaniah, verse 2. And we just got off talking about she obeyed not the voice. And we discussed about the voice and drew comparisons to the voice of the Lord in the garden, how that it was correlating to his presence. And also that presence is also known in verse 7 of Zephaniah chapter 1. Hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. I mentioned that the day of the Lord doesn't come unless the presence of the Lord is made known first, meaning a warning at the hands of prophets, at the hands of Jesus Christ himself, at the hands of his followers. We're going to see a whole bunch of heralds even in our day right now. And so you yourself can be saying the day of the Lord is at hand. And that is a message to someone around you in your orbit. You are a satellite of God into this world, and in your orbit, you're gonna relay the same information. It's nothing new. God is not saying something new. God wants us all to be holy, even as he is holy. And this is something that he required, especially from Jerusalem, of all places. Jerusalem is where where the tabernacle of the Lord is. And so in this particular day and age, he had expectation of these people, and they did not meet it. And so it was because of the law that expectation was actually enforced, but they were not enforcing it, they were corrupting it. And so we continue on, and this is the middle of the verse 2, she trusted not in the Lord, she drew not near to her God. And so this could mean also that their sins were told to them, but they felt like, man, I'm exceeding sinful. God will never forgive me for this. And they could have felt that way. And they could have been dealing in idolatry, and they could have been saying this and that and the other about, whatever laws that they have broken. But God was trying to show them something. And it's kind of like painting a picture of what it is to the future, because we're not treated, I'm talking about in this day and age, we're not treated the same as under the law. If we were treated as under the law, we'd be dead right where we stand. We would be stoned to death. There would be a place for us to be stoned to death. And especially for idolatry, and somebody knew it, and we're selling the figurines and the statues, and we're saying Allah bless you, and all sorts of other names and whatever. It's just, today, in this day and age, we have so much grace that people then start to think, well, does God actually care about anything? Is he just indifferent now? Did he once upon a time care, and now he's just like, I give up? No. His word stands for sure. And that's why the lesson's title is awesome, because it says that day is coming. And whether we wait 1,000, 2,000 years, the next day will be closer to that day than the day before. And that's just the truth. That literally is the truth. And so, just this idea, like like I've said before, that that leadership were most likely men, and Zephaniah used the pronouns she and her on purpose as to rile them up some kind of way, to get them, get their ego, insatiated. And so all these things that she has done was because of one reason. Not because the city, the land, has done anything, but because the leadership has not done what they were supposed to do. And so this is where Zephaniah is just like is bringing down the hammer on the leadership. So the reason is her princes. Now I'm going to say it's been saying she all along. She did this and she did that, and she's not doing this and she is doing that, and she's just not right, and she is doing a lot of blame on she. But now it's going to give the reason. There's always a reason why somebody does something. There's always a cause for every effect. And so Zephaniah masterfully brings this out, how she has done all these things. But now verse 3, it talks about why. It says, her princes within her are roaring lions. Her judges are evening wolves. They gnaw not the bones till the morrow. This is one of those verses, like, sometimes catch me out there, like, what in the world are you talking about? But I did a cross-reference, and I came across in Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 6. Let's look at that real quick. Now, it may be a little confusing as to how I'm correlating it, but Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 6, it mentions that lion and it mentions the wolves, but is not. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Wherefore a lion out of the forest shall slay them, and a wolf of the evening shall spoil them. A leopard shall watch over their cities. Every one that goeth out thence shall be torn in pieces, because their transgressions are many and their backslidings are increased. Now this is found in Jeremiah, which oddly not odd, but for the same reason, Jeremiah is prophesying the same message as Zephaniah, and we see it here, and it's very, very close in the imagery, except it's not dealing so much as the princes being the roaring lions or the judges being the wolves, even though they are. It's more on the other end about how the people are affected by these lions and wolves. And also it mentions leopards. And it also mentions an end result. And so I'm coming at this in another kind of way. In Zephaniah, it talks about the princes being roaring lions. Now, I like how the commentary brought out that the princes is dealing with civil authority, civil government, civil, leadership. And that's the same goes for judges. And then in verse 4, it talks about prophets, and it's talking about spiritual government, spiritual leadership. But either way, whether it's civil or spiritual, it's all leadership. And this is the reason why she, talking about Jerusalem, is oppressed. Now, Jeremiah talks about that oppression, and it talks about the linear movement of that oppression. And it's the same, is in the same order as in verse 3 of Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 3, how it talks about the princes are roaring lions and the judges are evening wolves. And so from there on, you see a progression, a linear movement towards what's going to happen as a result to these people. As a result of this oppression, the people are going to suffer. And so let's look at that again in Jeremiah 5:6. Wherefore a lion out of the forest shall slay them. Who are them? Who are they? Who is the them that they are referring to, that Jeremiah is referring to? He's talking about Judah. He's talking about the exact same idea that's going on in Zephaniah. And that lion is going to slay them, except he doesn't say the lions are the princes, except we can actually infer that the lions are the princes in this. And a wolf of the evening shall spoil them. Now we see in Zephaniah that the evening wolves are the judges. And so is in the same order. Zephaniah is taking from Jeremiah an idea which is all coming together, is all the same. But Jeremiah goes a little bit further, whereas Zephaniah is talking about the day of the Lord. Jeremiah is kind of showing a progression to the day of the Lord. It says, a leopard shall watch over their cities. Every one that goeth out thence shall be torn in pieces, because their transgressions are many, and their backslidings are increased. And this is the reason why we have the day of the Lord, which is coming. This is the reason why we have the warning which of the day of the Lord, which is coming. That's the name of the title. I got to harp on it, because if I don't harp on it, you don't remember it. The day of the Lord is coming because of their transgressions are many and their backslidings are increased. And then you can also flip it back to Zephaniah and go right back to verse 2. And says, she obeyed not the voice, she received not correction, she trusted not in the Lord, she drew not near to her God. And so these all work hand in hand. These are the reasons. And the reasons mainly was the princes, the judges, the prophets, and who else? And the priests. And these are the civil and spiritual authorities of that day. Her prophets are light, verse 4, and treacherous persons. Let's look at verse 4. It says that the prophets are light and treacherous persons. I looked up the word light, and I thought it was interesting, and I didn't think no more of it until I remember last week when I kind of touched on it, but I didn't go into it. And this is what I was talking about earlier, keep in the back of your mind. The idea of, what was the idea? My God, I'm so sorry. Anyway, I'm just going to go right to it, and it'll jog my memory. Matthew chapter 22, and I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it's a parable from 1 through 14. Matthew 22, 1 through 14. I'll probably read like the first couple verses. But the word light appears in the New Testament also, and I had to look it up in both the Hebrew and the Greek. The Hebrew word light in verse 4, in Zephaniah chapter 3, it means, it's transliterated pakaz, which is meaning reckless, to be wanton, without regard for what is right. That is what light is. And so the prophets had no regard for what was right. Think about that. The prophets. Now, these are the mouthpiece of the Lord. These are the men that were used by God to speak the oracles of God. And they knew God. Yet they took God's words lightly, without any regard. And this is the idea. They were reckless with it. And because if you have a prophet that refuses to prophesy in any given moment, I mean, God's going to get his word out. Don't get me wrong. There are 3,000 other prophets that have not bowed their knee to Baal. So therefore, God will get his word out. But just the idea of being reckless like that, there are some people that will not hear the gospel because you or him or them, they were reckless with the word of God. They took it lightly. They did not really believe everything that was written in there. And so because they didn't really believe, and this comes back to our topic of faith on the last couple lessons, when you really believe, you actually move on those beliefs. You actually speak on those beliefs. You can't just stand idly by hearing from the Lord and just say, you know what? The Lord will get to them. No, you're the one. You have the gift. You're the one that has been given the word. And so these prophets, they become reckless and wanton, and they were not exercising their office very well. And so when I go to Matthew chapter 22, I see a parable that kind of looks very similar to what's going on in Zephaniah, what's going on in Jeremiah, what's going on in this day and age before Judah was besieged by Babylon. And so it's kind of the same thing, and it continues to be the same thing because it is a prophecy not just for the day when Judah was about to be taken by Babylon, but it's also a prophecy in the future, set in the future. And they're still doing it to this day. They're receiving gospel message and they're taking it lightly. They think it's a light thing. Oh, don't worry about it. That's those crazy Christ people. Jesus is not no Messiah. We're still waiting for our Messiah. And that man they call Jesus, that's a farce. They've taken it lightly. And so it's the same thing that's going on. And I wanted to touch on just a little bit. And Jesus answered, this is 22 of Matthew, and spake unto them again by parables, and said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding. Now remember, I don't want to, I have to do it. In Zephaniah, in chapter 1, verse 7, it says, hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord thy God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. For the Lord hath prepared a sacrifice, he hath bid his guest. This is chapter 1, verse 7. Now that kind of jogged my memory about guest, bidding guest. And Matthew 22, right there, it says, in verse 3, he sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. God is doing the same thing today as he was doing in Zephaniah's day, in Jeremiah's day, in Judah, before Babylon caught them in that day. And so we see there's nothing changed. The message is still going forth. The day of the Lord is still at hand. And I think they take it lightly that because they were taken into Babylon, and this is after the fact, that Jews historically, they've been through all this turmoil and they figure, oh, we've been through it. The day of the Lord has already come and gone. Well, now we're just trying to make peace with our God, and we're waiting for the Messiah to set things straight. And this is how they're thinking. But Jesus comes way after Babylon happened. And he gives them a parable and says this to them, that they were bidden to a wedding and they would not come. Again, he sent forth other servants, saying, tell them which are bidden, behold, I have prepared my dinner. Now, this lesson is called That Day is Coming. Because we don't have a date, that doesn't mean we do not prepare. For God has prepared a day, and we need to be prepared for that day. Remember, we are his servants. It is not the other way around. We are not the master of God's word, and we're not the master of his plan. We are in his plan. We are his, and we are subject to his will. And so with that said, we should remember that we need to think straight about this day that is coming and prepare ourselves. And I almost lost my train of thought there. But in the parable, it says, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen, my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. Now think about that. In Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 7, it says, he hath prepared a sacrifice. He has bid his guests. In chapter 22, Matthew 22 and verse 4, is I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. The two common denominators is that there is a killing of an animal. And most Jews knew, and I'm talking about in biblical times, most Jews knew that the killing of an animal most likely was a sacrificial animal, sacrifice unto the Lord. And so this is where the Lord is coming from for a later topic. He has prepared himself, and I'll go into Hebrews. Oh, thou hast prepared me a body. Right? Remember that? In the volume of the book that is written of me, to do thy will, O God. And God has sent his son, Jesus. He has sent his son. Now I'm saying that specifically. He has sent forth his son. He has spoken his word. Right now, we have the word. We are the ones who deliver the word. We are the servants. And we are trying to tell these people, look, the day of the Lord is at hand. It's coming. It was coming for the Jews then, and it's coming for the Jews now. The day of the Lord is at hand. And even for Gentiles, this message is for them also. For all you people that do not have Christ in your life, that do not even have Yahweh as a memory or a forethought in your minds, you need to know that the day of the Lord is going to touch you as well. And it's going to touch you especially because it's just the fact that we hear the word, the prophecy, the word of the Lord, the gospel is going to go forth into all the world, and everyone who has ears is going to hear it. And so there will be no excuse. And so he says, but they made light of it. Verse 5, they made light of it. And I looked up that word, and the Greek word ameleo, which means careless, neglect, disregard. They did the same things. And so now I'm starting to figure out, wait a minute, these people who made light of Zephaniah's word then are the prophets. And they were considered light and treacherous persons. And then you have in this lesson, in parable, chapter 22 of Matthew, that they made light of the bidding of the master for the wedding ceremony, the marriage. And so, and they went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants and entreated them spitefully and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned up their cities. Then said he to his servants, the wedding is ready, but they which were bidden are not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways and as many as you shall, in other places, highways and hedges. And as many as you shall find, bid to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came, now this is the day of the Lord. Now think about this right now. The king came in to see the guests. He saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment. Now, the idea of putting something on, a garment, being clothed, being cloaked, comes to mind when I look at that. Because then in last week's lesson, didn't it say in Zephaniah chapter 1, not chapter 1, chapter 2, verse 3, seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be you shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. Now, I know I'm going roundabout, but this lesson is so awesome. I just can't get over it. The way we hide from God's wrath right now is through the gospel of Jesus Christ. We are to come into fellowship with God through Christ by his blood, believing on him and obeying his gospel and everything that his gospel entails. That's going from the Gospels all the way to Revelation. Everything that it entails, we ought to see it, hear it, ingest it, believe it, and take it on, and just be not hearers of the word only, but be doers of the word. And so I want to go on forward. And it continues, Zephaniah continues and talks about her priests and has polluted the sanctuary. I got to find the chapter again. And her priests polluted the sanctuary. They have done violence to the law. Now, I want to make certain that everyone understands that all of these things are it's kind of like bullet points. Zephaniah is bullet pointing the reasons why these things are about to come upon them, upon her, which is Jerusalem. And it's because of the princes. It's because of the judges. It's because of the prophets. It's because of the priests. Everyone has blame to spare. And all these things, all these people, and it ends up that it says, comma, they have done violence to the law. Not just the priest, but the priests, the prophets, the princes, and the judges. They have all done violence to the law. I can say that about the judges because in Deuteronomy, there are laws concerning judges and how they ought to judge the people. They ought to judge righteous judgment and have the heart of love in them. And this is in Deuteronomy. the king should not be like that lion, with intimidation. I like also how our Sunday school lesson commentary points out that the roaring lions is meant of governmental authorities intimidating the people under them. And don't we have that here in America, where if you don't succumb to a rule or a practice, that you will be taxed, that you will be pushed out of something and eminent domain because we need this. You need to get out of this land. We need to build something that's good for everyone. And so they'll put their foot on the necks of John Q. The John Q. Public. I don't know how they say that term, but anyway, the roaring lions is the princes, and that's in reference to government intimidation. And then you got the evening wolves, which also the Judges is talking about. Is how they finish off what wasn't eaten to begin with. Like you have the intimidation of the government, but then you also have those judges which want to satisfy themselves. So you have government which intimidates the people, and then you have public holders of office. And I'm not trying to get political or anything, but this is exactly what's being said. Judges are evening wolves. They'll take the prey and then gather it for themselves. So while the lions are just trouncing people, the wolves come in the evening and have their meal later on. And it says they gnaw not the bones till the morrow. And so they leave the bones for tomorrow morning. And so also, it says our prophets, in verse 5, the just Lord is in the midst thereof. And I want to talk to you about that also. In the midst of where? Now, remember, we're talking about her, she, that place is Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is in Judah. Judah is ultimately the country that all this day of the Lord is about to come and crash down on them. So it's ultimately Judah, but it's specifically talking about Jerusalem because that is literally where the presence of the Lord would abide under normal circumstances. His presence was in Jerusalem because the temple was in Jerusalem. The temple was in Jerusalem, and all forms of worship was all towards Yahweh himself. And everyone, they will make the trip to Jerusalem for all the feast. And so Jerusalem is the place where God is in the midst of. And so it has the feel, and I kind of wrote this and I wanted to read exactly what I wrote. It has the feel that as though God is saying, be like me, be ye holy, for I am holy. Now, he says that, but it seems like that in this verse. The just Lord is in the midst thereof. He will not do iniquity. Every morning doth he bring his judgment to light. He faileth not, but the unjust knoweth no shame. So in essence, he's saying, this is how the Lord is. He is just. And because of his justness, and I don't know if that's a word, whatever, he will not do iniquity. He will always have judgment come to light, and he will not fail in performing the law. He definitely will not do violence to the law. He definitely will not make light of it and be treacherous people. He definitely will not gnaw their bones and eat them up like wolves, evening wolves, and intimidate them like roaring lions. He definitely will trust in the Lord. He definitely will draw near to God. He definitely will obey the voice of the Lord. He definitely will receive correction. This is what an ideal person is. This is what a person who is just will do. And God is showing them, I am just, be like me. This is what verse 5 is saying. On the other hand, in contrast to that, the latter clause says, but the unjust knoweth no shame. Now, if you're not ashamed of sin, then you're not sorry and you don't really believe and you don't really care. You're just like that prophet that that make light of things. You're careless. You're reckless. You just don't care. You disregard it. It's not important to you. So ideally, it shows us the behavior of Judah that should have been that as of a just man, like the just Lord, but rather they are ashamed at the presence of the Lord. See Jeremiah chapter 3. Oh, I didn't write that scripture down. Ashamed. I think it was Jeremiah 3:3. Let's look at that real quick. And I want to kind of skim because I kind of covered it. The day is coming. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. All right, Jeremiah 3:3 real quick. Yeah, there you go. It was 3. Thank God. Therefore the showers have been withholden, and there hath been no latter rain, and thou hast a whore's forehead. Thou refusest to be ashamed. What is he saying? What is Jeremiah saying? He done cursed at us. He said that they are just like a whore's forehead. It's bare, meaning it's not covered, meaning it's painted, meaning hair is braided. Everything is all done up like a whore in the streets, because that's how the whores actually dressed back in those days. And so he's making a comparison of these people and those that refuse to be ashamed. Now, in Zephaniah, we see the two differences. One is just and one is unjust. The just would be ashamed. I would be ashamed if I fell into sin, because I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. He loved me so much. He died on the cross, and I can't bear the thought that I would hurt him like that. And then even let's go on. I kind of want to skim through the next couple verses because I'm about to get cut off, and I don't want to make it a 3-part video. And so verse 6 and 7, the world is judged and punished in front of Judah. Verse 6 and 7, it says, I have cut off the nations, their towers are desolate. I made their streets waste, that none passeth by. Their cities are destroyed. Why? So that there is no man, and that there is none inhabitant. I said, surely thou wilt fear me. He's talking about Jerusalem, Judah. He says, surely you'll fear me after all you've seen in front of you. After all these people that I've laid waste in front of you. You'll fear me and believe me, and then even learn to love me and care for my things. And will receive my instructions, so their dwelling should not be cut off. Howsoever I punished them, but they rose early and corrupted all their doings. They did it anyway. And so when we come to verse 8, that day is coming. Save the date. Even though you cannot mark it